See You in Queens is a Modern Spaces production. I'm Rebekah, marketing manager for Modern Spaces and producer for this show. Eric Benaim, co-founder and president of Modern Spaces, is the podcast host. Please note that while we welcome and invite all guests into our studio, their views do not necessarily reflect that of our own company. While content will not be explicit in nature, sometimes colorful language will be used. Listener discretion is advised.
Take us to Queens at once.
A wild rumor swept the nation this afternoon. It was vouchsafed that the New York Mets had become baseball champions of the world.
20 votes are all that separate Belinda Katz and Tiffany Caban in the Queens DA Democratic primary.
Come to Queens. It's cool now.
It's a great day for New York City. It's an extraordinary day for Queens.
Welcome to See You in Queens. I'm the show producer, Rebekah, and you will be joined shortly by our host, Eric Benaim. We're really glad we can continue recording even during this COVID-19 season, but we have switched things up. We are now recording remotely with our guests. We are no longer in studio together. Eric is at his house, I am at mine, and today we are joined by attorney and friend of Modern Spaces, Taso Pardalis. Taso is a lawyer and is going to tell us what it's like at his law firm right now. He really gave us a lot of interesting things to think about, particularly crime doesn't stop, legal needs don't stop, court systems have to continue, and while there's adjustments, these things still have to go on. So he talks about what that looks like, and of course, he's a Queens boy like Eric, so they certainly share memories about the good old days in Queens. So we're so excited that we were virtually joined by Taso, and we hope you love this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. We look forward to more virtual recordings with guests, but of course we are excited for the time when we are back in our office studio and kind of resuming life as normal. But until then, we hope everyone is safe, healthy, and well, and see you in Queens.
Hey everybody, welcome to See You in Queens. And today's guest is actually a friend of mine, Taso Pardalis. Taso, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Hi, everyone.
So Taso, you're an attorney. You want to tell me about your firm first?
Sure.
Maybe your firm?
Sure. I'm a partner at Pardalis and Rebekah. I'm the Pardalis at that firm. We have two offices, but our original office and our flagship in Queens is on Broadway and 35th Street in Astoria. So not too far from your original office and walking distance to your Astoria office, Eric.
Well, thank you. So you like me, grew up in Queens. We actually have several childhood friends in common. Where in Queens did you grow up?
I grew up in Whitestone. And we do have several friends in common, and we've shared stories that we probably can't share on this podcast from high school.
No, definitely not. And you grew up in Whitestone your whole life?
Yeah, born and raised. I lived there till I was about, 30, I think. And then finally made my way out of Queens. I met my wife is from New Jersey, so I ended up moving to the one place that I made fun of my whole life. And,
Careful, this show is being edited and produced by a New Jersey native.
So my whole life I made fun of New Jersey, and of course, as fate would have it, that's where I am now. So
coincidentally, my whole life I made fun of New Jersey also, and coincidentally, my wife is also from New Jersey.
Yeah, there you go. That's the world, laughing back at you.
So when did you start your firm?
So we started in 2009. So we've been there about 12 years now, and we started as a very small firm. I was a solo at first, and then I had my partner Joe, who you know, and we're now one of the top full-service law firms in Queens. We represent small businesses, individuals, families, and entrepreneurs and artists in so many different areas, ranging from commercial and corporate transactions to trademarks, intellectual property, real estate, employment, and even criminal defense. So the firm's been around for about 12 years. It's amazing. It's amazing working in Queens, actually.
So we're actually in the middle of the whole coronavirus. Everyone's, I guess, on pause, sheltering in place or whatever. I have an idea for you. A new
right.
area, a new area you need to practice to start servicing is becoming a divorce attorney.
Yeah,
So
you know what?
I think becoming a divorce attorney is going to be booming after this whole time.
You know, it's one of the few areas we don't practice in, and it's by choice. And you know, I did it a little bit in the beginning, but and it's a very, very profitable area for attorneys, but it's just not for me, you know.
Yeah,
It's just not
yeah.
for me. But I hear you. I'm at home with 3 kids, and you know.
So we're dealing with the coronavirus. What are you guys at your office doing? Like, is business still as usual? You guys still like representing clients? What's going on now?
Sure. So we're still open. All of our staff is working from home, with the exception of my partner and I. I am actually mostly working from home, but I do go into the office to make sure we get our mail and things are moving along. My partner Joe has been keeping the Astoria office open full time. So while we shut down Manhattan, Astoria has remained open on a regular schedule throughout all of this, and Joe is there alone, basically. But we are still servicing full blown. You know, the courts have mainly shut down, but real estate transactions are still trying to close, and the criminal courts and the family courts are still open. And so we have been dealing with that, as scary as it is.
So you're actually going to court?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, people still need their due process in 24 hours on criminal arraignments, and there are still very, very sensitive family matters that are happening, you know, with child custody and child protective services, and you know, there's domestic violence and things that you just can't ignore, even in a pandemic, right?
Wow. I didn't
Yeah,
think of it.
so
I didn't even
it's
think
been
of
pretty
that. All that
intense.
stuff.
It's been pretty intense, man.
Wow. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
And with regards to real estate, are you trying to do any closings? Have you done any?
Yeah, we have. We've actually closed a few. We're basically handling transactions in 2 different ways at this time. And one is that we're doing gap closings or escrow closings, where we try to get everybody to sign and complete everything separately or by power of attorney. And then we'll messenger documents and wire money to title companies, and the title company will hold all the documents in escrow, and then once the money comes in, clears, and they'll distribute to the proper party, and then the closing will actually happen without anybody there. So we did a few of those. You know, it was logistically a nightmare, but we got it done.
So, so you're still closing. It just takes like an extra 2-3 days to actually.
That's right. And you're not attending, or maybe just 1 or 2 people are attending as opposed to 6, let's say, right? So, and then the other thing we've been doing is we've been moving towards virtual closings. You know, Governor Cuomo last week allowed notary acts by video.
Yeah.
And so that was a big impediment to closing, because you had to have someone witness the signature live. And without that, we're able to kind of transition to a virtual closing. And although it's not truly virtual, you still have a live person somewhere that documents have to be brought to. But the point is that if we're forced to transact, we've been able to transact, you know, with more hoops to jump through, but it's happening.
So here's a question: do you think, like, after this whole, I call it a little bit of a nightmare, after this whole little nightmare is over, right? So I'm hoping it's over in like a month, right? And people hopefully get back to normal and stuff like that. Do you think virtual closings will still happen now?
I don't think so, because there's no legal structure for it in place that works very well. And traditionally, our industry, the legal industry, is usually the last to innovate out of every industry. I mean, we resisted the computer, you know, till the very end, right? But I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for technology companies to come in now and fix that. So I'm hoping that we can transact virtually, and I think there's a huge opportunity that, you know, for a tech company or of some sort to come in and say, look, this was the problem here, let's fix it, right? And I'm hoping it happens because it would really be. I mean, look, everywhere else in the country, you don't have the traditional closing that we have in New York. People just don't go. So there's no reason that we should not, move to that model here.
Any other kinds of legal things that can happen virtually? Now that I think about it, aside from closings?
You know what? We have been moving our litigation files along, and we've been doing virtual depositions, and
Wow.
we've been doing virtual arbitration. So a lot of what we've been doing in an attempt to keep clients moving is on, the courts are shut down on commercial matters, okay?
Uh-huh.
With the exception of emergency relief.
And there's no evictions now anyway, so.
That's right, none of it.
Yeah.
So what we've been doing on the commercial side is we've been contacting our opponents saying, look, we're going to be stuck here. It could be a month, could be 3 months, right? We don't know. Why don't we agree to go to arbitration? Let's take it out of the courts. Let's go to arbitration, and we'll do it virtually.
Wow.
And it's been working. So this week we had 2 virtual depositions and 2 virtual arbitrations. And it was by agreement. Everybody just agreed. And, the clients agreed too, because if you're sitting there in some sort of commercial dispute and now, the case is already going to take a couple of years and now you're looking at an extra 6 months because of this, both sides kind of look at it and say, okay, sure, let's just get it over with. Right.
Yeah.
And so we're pushing for that, and it's working pretty well. And we're trying, we're doing online virtual client intakes, client meetings. We're actually doing events. We do these events where we give out like free legal information to entrepreneurs. We're still doing those online now. So we're doing whatever we can to keep things normal, I guess.
Wow. So you represent a lot of businesses. So I know you represent like everything from restaurants to
that's right.
various types of
startups, traditional businesses, construction companies, manufacturing. I mean, you name it. We're a business firm. Yeah.
Everyone's affected now.
Yeah.
Are you getting calls from people now? You also represent landlords, correct?
Of course.
So you represent both sides. You represent both the tenants in some cases, and some cases you represent the landlords.
Sure.
So obviously, there's like people who can't pay rent, or people unfortunately who are going to be going out of business. Are you getting calls from people like we even haven't heard from? I mean, like a year, saying they don't know what to do. Are you getting a lot of those calls right now?
Yeah, nonstop, and we're getting calls from both tenants and landlords about, hey, can you look at our lease and let us know what our options are? And what we're looking at there on the business side and on the tenant side in general is we're looking at what we call force majeure provisions. Force majeure is basically a force that renders the contract invalid because you cannot perform it due to a superior force or an act of God or something that's beyond your control. And and it only exists in the law if you've contracted for it. So it requires a review of your existing lease. And in that review, you'll see if you have a force majeure clause and if it covers pandemics or disease. And if it does, you're very able to go back to your landlord or whoever you're in contract with, if it's not a real estate relationship, and say, hey, look, because of this event, I cannot perform. So we need to either stop this contract or delay it, right? And we're mainly looking at that. We are negotiating deferments for people. So both, and a lot of the landlords know that they're not going to come into money, and a lot of people in other types of contracts, like construction projects, know. So we are seeing people being reasonable for the most part. Yeah. And saying, okay, look, I will let it go for 30 days or 90 days or whatever it is, but it has to be paid once things open back up over some period of time.
Yeah.
So far we've been seeing pretty reasonable minds. And that's a nice sign.
Yeah. I kind of predict you're going to start seeing with regards to the force majeure, everyone's going to want it now in their leases and their contracts. And everyone's going to specifically be calling you now and be like, I need to add pandemic now into my force majeure section.
If you were in business during or prior to 9/11, you never took it out. Like, we have it in all of our documents because, you learned from 9/11 what could happen with acts of God and acts of terrorism and force majeure provisions. So it's been pretty solid in our papers because we were around for that,
Yeah, I mean, but it's also something that nobody even like really considers. They just skip that whole section.
Sure.
What's in the lease? Yeah,
that's our job,
yeah.
So,
what are your favorite spots in Queens?
oh man, I could do like an hour podcast about this. Okay, but look, I'm born and raised here, so I'm just gonna run through whatever I can run through quickly to not take up the entire time here. Let's see. In Astoria, where our office is, my favorite places are Gossip Coffee on 30th Avenue. I don't know if you've ever been to Gossip, but it's an amazing store with amazing coffee and food product. It's run by the guys. The guys behind Gossip are the 4-5 Coffee company, and they're just amazing. Amazing people, hospitality. The coffee's amazing. I'm a regular at Il Bambino, at Sanford's, and at Bahari. Those are my 3 favorite restaurants in Astoria. I grew up in Whitestone, so Main Street was just a stone throw away. So at Main Street, I think if you, I don't know if you've ever been, Eric, but Asian Jewels is like this amazing restaurant for Chinese.
I know Asian Jewel. I go there a couple times a year.
Yeah, it's just great. And there's this other little place on Prince Street in Main, at Flushing, and it's called the 698 Cafe. And it's kind of a more takeout, casual. There's some tables you can sit and eat, but the food is just incredible. I would call it like a modern Asian, right?
Yeah.
And that's like a little hidden gem. My kind of classic places that I still will pop in at once in a while if I can or if I'm around is I love going to Singa's Famous Pizza on Corona Avenue in Elmhurst. Jan's Ice Cream in Jackson Heights. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's one of these old ice cream parlors that's been there since the 50s. Just like a classic spot, especially if you have kids, right?
One of my favorites that's actually in your old neighborhood, I used to go with mutual friends of ours, is Cherry Valley. Remember Cherry Valley?
Oh my gosh! Listen, I grew up at walking distance from Cherry Valley.
Cherry Valley, yeah.
You're right. I didn't even think of it. But there's another classic. That's a late night sandwich spot.
Yes.
A 4 a.m. I don't have the 4 a.m. nights anymore, but it's a 4 a.m. sandwich spot.
Perfect, exactly.
P.O. on Northern is classic, and right by your office, you guys have LIC Market, which is just awesome. Like what a great place. And then aside from food, I think one of the coolest things that I've gone to a few times, I discovered. I went to Queens College in Flushing, so I discovered this at some point because it was connected to Queens College. But there's the Louis Armstrong House in Jackson Heights.
I've been there before.
I'm sorry, you've been there? Yeah, it's like a cultural gem. I mean, it's Louis Armstrong's house from when he wrote all those amazing songs. And it hasn't been touched. I mean, his piano is there. His musical score sheets are there. His photos are hanging on the wall. I mean, it's just amazing, right? If you're into jazz, it's just like a landmark, right? I mean, it literally is a landmark.
Yeah, no, definitely. 20 years.
The Queens Museum is one of my favorite places. They have this giant room where, and if you're into real estate, you'll love it. They have this giant room where they have a mini replica of the entire city of New York. And every building in the city is there in miniature scale. And you can literally go into this giant room and find, the house you grew up in or the building you live in right now or your favorite park or whatever it is. And it's huge. It's amazing. I can't believe somebody actually built this thing. So it's worth a visit there. I guess that's it. Those are kind of like my little hidden. I could go on and on, man. I'm literally. I just thought of like.
You're a real Queens boy. You passed the test.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks. I mean, I've got even more. I've got even more.
So, any legal advice you have for anybody right now listening to the show? Maybe we're obviously going through the whole Corona thing, so I most likely it might be even like a business owner doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, I think for business owners right now, the first thing you're doing is looking at all your contracts and your leases and looking at, what type of deferment options you might have for payments and what type of force majeure provisions you might have or impossibility of performance arguments you might be able to make, just to either be able to walk away if you have to without owing anything, or to delay and get back on your feet. We are offering as a service application and a walkthrough of the payroll protection program process. And, we're not so much attacking the loans because I think business owners can get a loan anywhere if they have a decent business. But the payroll protection program is something that's really an amazing tool. And the facts are still coming on it, but we've been pretty ahead of the curve on that. And we know that, you can get money to cover payroll up to 2 times the amount of your monthly payroll over some period of time.
Mm-hmm. I believe it's 4 months.
Yeah. And that money can be forgiven as long as you use it for payroll and you don't reduce your staff by 25% or more. So if, in our situation, just using my company as an example, we haven't laid anybody off. Right? We have everybody working remotely at the moment, right? So we would be like a perfect candidate, right? We would put in our application. We don't plan on laying anybody off. Hopefully that's how it stays. And at some point we would turn around after receiving the payroll protection program money and say, look, we used the money, we paid payroll, we kept all these people employed, we didn't lay off one person, and then it would be forgiven. Okay, which is amazing. Now there's some caveats there that are being carved out, like any payroll over 100,000 is not covered, and certain other things. You can use the money for other things like rent and mortgages. However, it might not be forgiven for whatever portion you use there. So I think that's the number one thing that business owners should be looking at is the PPP, the payroll protection program, as opposed to a regular loan.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, definitely something. If you're a business owner out there, definitely give you a call and explain this. I think it's a really good program. I've been getting calls all week from landlords who yesterday was the first of the month. And people who live in apartments have to pay rent.
Still there.
What happens if a landlord has residential tenants and they can't pay rent? Obviously, there's no evictions right now, but what's your advice to that?
I mean, look, there are no evictions at the moment. You can't even file the petition for an eviction, for when it does come back online. So I think the best thing the landlord could do now is try to either negotiate and have some sort of understanding of when the rent will be paid, and get that into a written agreement. Even if it's a simple agreement, you're not going to run to a lawyer and do a 20-page agreement for one residential rent. But even if it's a one-pager where it's like, look, I'm going to defer the rent for 30 days, but then when May comes or April comes or whatever, when May rolls around, then it's due. Okay. So I think negotiating that and making it a clear in writing negotiation, whether that's, a document or even in an email or text or something, just some meeting of the minds with your tenant, I think is very critical right now.
Well, thank you for that advice. I'll definitely share it with a lot of our landlords. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Oh, sure. They can, my cell phone number is 347-400-8194. I feel like the whole world has it anyway, so I'll just give it out on internet radio. My email is Taso, Taso @pnlawyers.com. Our office number is 718-777-0400. And we are all over Facebook and Instagram. So
great. So definitely give a follow. Thank you, Taso, for being a guest today.
Thank you, guys.
And everybody, I'll see you in Queens.
Thanks, you. And thank you for hosting this podcast. It's such a great podcast, man.
Thank you, man. Have a good one. Stay safe.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to See You in Queens, a business, real estate, and lifestyle podcast from Modern Spaces. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. See you in Queens.